Hey guys, I'm excited. Finally, here it is. An early look at the CD-ROM emulator that we all have been waiting for. PicoIDE is the name, and you guessed right, we have another retro PC device powered by a Raspberry Pi. Now the PicoIDE can also emulate an IDE hard drive, but for me, and I believe most of you watching my videos, well, I'm mostly interested in the CD-ROM emulation because there are already many solutions available to emulate IDE hard drives really well. So in this video, we're going to focus on using the PicoIDE to replace a good old IDE CD-ROM drive. The device I'm holding in my hands is a pre-release sample. This case is 3D printed, but the final version, the one that you can order, it will have a nicer injection molded enclosure. I want to thank Ian, firstly, for sending me this sample and being part of this exciting launch, and of course, for putting in a tremendous amount of work into making such a product possible. Ian is well known in the retro PC community. He's the guy behind the PicoGUS, which is an ISA sound card powered also by a Raspberry Pi. I've covered it with a few videos on the channel. In the beginning, it started out as an affordable way to get an ISA Gravis ultrasound, but over time, Ian worked hard on improving the firmware, and it's now emulating all sorts of sound devices and can also emulate a mouse through a USB port as well as a gamepad. Let's take a close look at the PicoIDE. The drive can be installed internally like a hard drive and placed, for example, behind a drive bay cover, or just like a regular floppy drive with the front facing the outside. That's why there are additional mounting holes on the side. Understand that I'm producing this video ahead of time, so some of the details might change. In terms of options and prices, well, two options should be available. A slightly cheaper version for around $70 USD. This is the base version, which comes without the front panel screen and buttons. With this one, we use DOS commands to mount CD images from the SD card and control everything. The deluxe version, this one should sell for around 100 USD, and this is the one I'm showcasing in this video. It has a nice OLED screen showing all the information and 4 buttons to control everything. The front panel is powered through a ESP32C3, and that chip has integrated Wi-Fi. So here we also get a very nice web interface to control the device, but also upload new images, the firmware, and who knows what else you can do with this in the future. Let's have a look at the front of the device. OLED screen, we have a LED. There are 4 buttons to control everything. There is a micro SD card slot and also a 3.5mm headphone port. Now with the headphone port, at least with the headphones that I'm using, I found the volume quite high. Ian mentioned that in the future there will be volume control available in a future firmware release. At the back of the unit we have a CD audio port. So yes, the PicoIDE supports Redbook CD audio by using images in the bin/queue format. We have some headers here to configure master, slave and cable select, just like on a standard IDE CD-ROM drive. Next is the IDE interface. Here we're connecting the drive to the motherboard, and for power we have a Burke connector, just like on a floppy drive. Upgrading the firmware is very important. I'm pretty sure by the time you receive your device in your hands, there will be a much newer version out with all sorts of fixes and new features. At the time of making this video, I was working with mainboard version 0.5 and 0.6 as well as the front panel version 0.3. For the test system, I'm using a slot 1 motherboard with a Pentium 3 CPU and a GeForce FX. I'm using parts that I know are working. I've used them in many projects. This way, if anything is off, I can tell right away. This video is brought to you by PCBWay, our long-term channel sponsor. It is your one-stop shop for printed circuit boards manufacturing, assembly, 3D printing and CNC machining. To order a PCB, click on the Instant Quote button, upload your Gerber file, check the preview of the board and then customize the PCB specifications. Check the link in the video description for more information. I tested the jumpers on the back, master, slave and cable select, and yeah, we have good news. All the tests that I carried out checked out just fine. For example, I started with a 40 GB mechanical hard drive with the hard drive jumpered to master and slave on the Pico IDE. That worked fine. Also, we have compatibility with the StarTech SATA to IDE adapter. That one also has master-slave jumpers on the device directly. If you are using the SD card to IDE adapter, which is one of my favorite gadgets, well, this one doesn't have any jumpers. It uses cable select. So here on the Pico IDE, just change it to cable select and everything works. And I tested with 2 devices on a single IDE cable connected to the primary channel, as well as the Pico IDE connected with its own IDE cable to the secondary channel. To get going, you create a folder structure as per the documentation on the website, and then you can load images onto the SD card in the ISO and bin.q format. There's also a little configuration file where you can tweak some of the behavior of the Pico IDE. I expect this to change in the future quite a lot, so I'm not going to go into too much details. There's also excellent online documentation available that I recommend you guys check out. Using the device is really straightforward. It doesn't matter if it's through the on-screen display, the DOS commands, or through the web interface. You navigate the folders, select the image you want to load, and off you go. You can also eject the image, very similar to a regular optical drive. In terms of performance under MS-DOS, I saw the equivalent of a 26x CD-ROM. That is terrific. Ian informed me that this can be much higher on other systems, depending on the operating system and the support of the BIOS. But for MS-DOS, this is absolutely outstanding. Games will install really, really fast. And remember, there is no delay with seeking around the disk. All the games I've tested worked just fine. I didn't test too many because I'm waiting for feedback from the community, a new firmware version, and then I'll be back with a follow-up video. Some examples on the screen. Also, Redbook CD digital audio worked perfectly fine. The games I tested are Screamer 2, Tomb Raider, and Descent 2. The Pico IDE can also boot from disk images. Here we have Windows 98, the installation CD, the OEM version, as well as Windows ME, that also worked. And I've tested a couple of custom boot ISOs that I put together over the years. The only issue I faced was with Windows 98 Quick Install. This is Linux based, so hopefully this can be fixed with a firmware version, because this is a disk I use a lot. The firmware and the DOS software definitely needs a little bit more work. So like I said, by the time you have got this device in your hands, several new firmware versions will likely be released. For example, I had some compatibility issues with the Acer CD-ROM DOS driver that is part of my DOS starter pack. I swapped it out for the Oak CD-ROM driver and then everything worked fine. But that one uses more conventional memory. The DOS software was also a little bit buggy. Every now and then I would get an error message, but I could confirm all the functionality is there. So again, this will be something that should get resolved over time. You will be able to purchase the Pico IDE through crowd supply. I hope the prices don't change, but like I said, I've got an early access sample and I can only work off the information that I've been given in advance. So guys, what are my thoughts? Well, I'm really excited. Ian is a really cool guy and he has demonstrated with the PicoGUS that he is sticking around. He doesn't abandon projects and he's gonna work really hard on new firmware and software releases. There's also a buzzing community on Discord, which I've been following, and the discussions are really exciting. And I think this is really the device that we as a retro PC gaming community have been waiting for. So finally, we have a device that is the GoTech for the CD-ROM optical drive. I heard recently in the news that most companies have stopped making new CDR media, so I think the time is right for us to switch over to flash-based CD-ROM emulation. So yeah, for me, a huge thumbs up. I've been asking for such a device for years. The console gamers, they got all sorts of nifty devices. On the PC, we also saw some implementations, but they were more like prototype boards that were dangling around in your case. We now have something with a proper enclosure that you can install in your case with a nice front panel, screen, buttons, and even the headphone port. It's wonderful. By the time you're watching this video, it should already be on sale. Maybe you already have one in your hands. A few other YouTubers are also involved in the pre-launch experience, and I'm excited to watch their videos and see what they're thinking, because they use other devices like Mac and all sorts of other machines. This is not just for the PC, which is what I cover. So yeah, can't wait to read your comments, your thoughts about the Pico IDE. Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting me through the years. And yeah, I will be back soon with another one.